and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris, and you're watching The Future is Female. This is the show where we find the extraordinary in every woman. Joining me on the show tonight, we have Amanda Wan. She is one of the 100 awardees of the inaugural Kotex She Can Awards, which honors women who have made significant strides in their industries. Amanda, welcome to the show. It's really good to have you joining us tonight. How are you?
Thank you for having me.
That's good. So, Amanda, you're one of the first female bartenders to represent Malaysia on an international stage. And I wouldn't normally make that gender distinction when in professions, but I think in this specific case, we should always celebrate women's firsts in industry, especially one in an industry that is perceived to be male-dominated and one that is perceived to be not for women. So Amanda, let's start with your journey. Let's start with how you came to be a bartender. I'm really wondering whether this was all kind of part of the plan or was this a serendipitous outcome?
Well, it was definitely not part of the plan, as I didn't start out thinking I would be a bartender. But I've always been very keen with doing things with my hands. I always like creating things. I always like being artsy. And so I always thought I would lean towards a more creative profession. And I did my foundations in art and design, but in the time it took to decide whether or not to uh, the time I took to choose a major, I decided to take a break and started working in Starbucks, even though I had no knowledge of drinks making whatsoever. But it was there that I was introduced to the world of coffee, and it just really started rolling on from there. At Starbucks, there were cupping sessions where we would taste different coffees from different regions and different roast profiles. And the best part of these tastings was actually the food pairing component.
Oh,
And I got more and more excited, got more and more drawn in by that. And eventually, I went from coffee to wine to cocktails behind the bar.
oh, that's really quite interesting because, a couple of things that you said about creativity. Is this a profession that satisfies your need to create? Is there a lot of creativity that goes into bartending?
There's definitely a lot of creativity because, there are some standard classic recipes, but there are also so many variations that you can create from there. And, it really is up to you to present a different story, to present a different flavor to whom you're serving in front of you. So, flavor pairing is just such a great tool to convey, images and messages. And so, yeah, it definitely is very creative.
I really like that. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in that. We'll come back to how you express your creativity through the concoctions. But I want to come back to your journey from a coffee barista to now a bartender mixing cocktails. Whether the palate is required for that. You talked a little bit about tasting. I think of sommeliers, pairing wines with culinary creations, working with chefs. What goes into training your palate to make sure that you are, I guess, creating or exercising your skill as a bartender?
I think I'm very lucky because I love food. I love to eat. I'm a proper Malaysian girl. And so, I probably honed my palate very early on with that. It really is just being willing to try new flavors and willing to just, uh, you know, cross them and merge them and combine them. And one of the first things I started with was flavor mapping notebook, with where
Oh,
I would really go and taste every single just pure ingredient, right? So like you taste a lime, and then what do you get from you get acidity, you get sweetness, but you also get perfume. And what sort of perfume is it? Is it more on, and then that's where the creativity comes in, because you think about color, you think about where you're going to place it on the color spectrum, you think about how you're going to blend those colors when you're creating a drink. And so yeah, it started from there.
So does presentation matter? Because I'm wondering about, when you present a drink, present a cocktail, is it more about the taste and the flavor profile, or is it about, what pleases the eye, the aesthetics of the drink?
I think it goes hand in hand, really, because if something in front of you looks aesthetically pleasing, you
Mm.
would be more inclined to try it.
Right. It's like food, right? You eat first with your eyes.
Yes, definitely. And also, like, the great thing about bartending is you're actually on a stage. You're actually creating these things right in front of, the eyes of the person who's going to consume it.
Oh.
So
So do you see it as a performance? Because, people are watching you, you have an audience.
yes, you do. Like, you like it or not, you are being watched all of the time. So you better make it worth their while.
So what kind of skills goes into this? I'm trying to understand a bit better. Now, I've in reading about bartending, I often see the term mixology used, and I think mixology is used to present the skill as a science. It's about the art of mixing, the science of mixing, the art of mixing. So, what kind of skills would you say goes into being a mixologist or a bartender? I'm sure there are hard skills and there are also soft skills.
Yep, definitely. I think there's actually a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into bartending. Well, first and foremost, you need the physical skills, you need the stamina, you need the strength, and a lot of people would think that this is where women are lacking in, but as you can see with the Kotex She Can Awards, women are able to achieve anything, and there's like no difference in this manner.
Mm.
Uh, you just need to be able to persevere, and you need to just put your head down and do the work. Like, you will have to move heavy crates of juices and soft drinks and beer barrels, and you will have to get down and dirty to clean bathrooms and clean
Right.
counters.
Well, it's all about being in the F&B, the food and beverage industry. It's all about the hospitality industry. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes of the prep work. I wanted to challenge that assumption, Amanda. Has gender marked your career in this industry? Is this industry seen to be one that is more for male dominated, not quite suitable for women?
I think back in the day, probably because bars were deemed more rowdy and it was more unsafe, but nowadays, I don't think that's a problem anymore, because people are a lot more civilized, and you can uh yeah,
Is there a social stigma though? I mean, socially, being in an industry that is to do with, nightlife, entertainment, and alcohol, it comes with a certain perception. Is that something you've had to battle in your career?
I think it was first and foremost my parents that I had to break this barrier with, because they're the ones who are most worried about having my daughter out in a nightclub, and it's sort of like unreliable crowds and things like that. But I was able to bring them to the cocktail bar where I was working at and make them a drink, and let them enjoy the atmosphere. And so being at a cocktail bar and being at like a club is completely different.
Okay.
And you also need to know like what you can and cannot do. Like, you know when to ask for help, you know who are the people you can trust to help you, and you make sure that you don't put yourself uh, in
Like a
compromising positions,
in harm's
or
way, yeah. Do you have a lot of colleagues who are women, a lot of compatriots who are women in this industry?
now, yes. When I started, not so much,
Okay.
especially not Asian women, uh, because there is that Asian mindset of why do you have to study so hard to serve other people? But the service industry always had that sort of black mark on them. But really, when they come to realize that bartending is very much more than making drinks, it is about time management, it is about creativity, it is about education, it is really a lot more, and mentorship, like being in the bartending industry, it's not something that you can just pick up from reading a book. It's not something that you can just learn off a course, even though these days you can. But back in the day, you really had to have that community, and you really had to have really had to find someone who was willing to share with you, to teach you what they knew, so that you could learn.
And did you have a mentor, Amanda? Was there someone who helped guide you through the industry, gave you wisdom and the tips and the tricks to get, to make it as where you are in this industry right now?
Yeah, when I first started, I think I was like the underdog, or like the black sheep, because of this, most people thought that I wouldn't last long.
You mean they underestimated you because you're a young, attractive woman? They underestimated
And
your
it was
commitment to
my
the
late
work?
mentor, Frankie Anthony, who brought me under his wing, and he was the one who taught me, even though, I didn't look the most promising. And from then on, it was my band of brothers, my other bartenders, who were really just along me, and no.
All right. Okay. Well, that's really quite interesting. Okay, you made it so far. You got all the way up to competing in a global stage at the Diageo World Class Bartending Competition. Amanda, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll come back and talk about your experience competing on the global stage. So we'll be right back with more on The Future is Female. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to The Future is Female. I'm Melisa Idris, and I'm speaking tonight to Amanda Wan. She is the first female bartender to represent Malaysia on an international stage, and she was recently honoured as an awardee of the inaugural Kotex She Can Awards, which champions women's progress, much like what we do on the show. Amanda, so let's talk a little bit about your experience participating in the Diageo World Class Bartending competition. How does one get to be to compete in such a competition, and what do you have to do to prepare for it?
Well, it was 3 rounds of national competition before the national finals. And then once I got through to the finals, the global finals, it was 6 rounds of different challenges. And it was spread out over 4 days, where, yes, it was either 1 or 2 rounds each day. And we were all separated into groups, and we had to make sure we were up bright and early in the morning to prepare for our sessions. And there were logistics involved, because we had to travel to different venues to do the different challenges. And one of it was a food pairing challenge with Chef Nobu at his restaurant in Athens. The global finals was in Athens. So being my first time traveling for work, traveling to bartend, winning an award, and representing Malaysia, I was a complete nervous wreck, but also absolutely excited. And the jet lag hit hard, the parties were wild, but every morning you would see every single one of us just bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and just making sure that we're putting all that we can into all of our challenges.
So in each of the challenge, which one did you find the one that tested you the most?
I think the one that tested me the most was the market challenge, because we were given 40 euros and we had to run to the closest supermarket, where everything was in Greek. and you had to pick out ingredients that were enough to make two cocktails that had to be contrasting. And I was also wearing heels at that time. So the good thing is the Korean finalist showed up with a full media crew. So the guy who was holding the boom mic didn't have to go anywhere far. So I borrowed his sneakers and ran to the supermarket, got my ingredients, came back, made two contrasting drinks, and managed.
Well, you adapted to the challenge. I hope you didn't make him wear your heels while he was waiting for you.
Yeah, the good thing about laces and sneakers is you can tighten them up, but heels, no, he could not fit in my shoes.
Right. Okay, so you have to make certain drinks. So what is it that judges are looking for in the competition? What do they judge you on?
They judged us on a myriad of different levels, and some of it were classic cocktails, how well we knew our classics, and how well we could present them, the story and the flavor, and how accurately. There were also rounds where it came to the food pairing. We had to choose 2 out of 5 dishes that chef had prepared and create cocktails that matched with the food. And then there was also uh, a signature serve challenge where to serve a bottle of premium rum or whiskey, what would you do alongside it to elevate its value? And I did a fruit cake with rum that my grandmother made for me. It was my late grandmother. She was a great, great baker. And
Wow.
I did chocolate calligraphy next to it.
Well,
So,
so
there were
that
lots
you
of
use
ways where we were pushed.
I'm so glad that you used your personal influences to inform your, you know, uh, your entry into the competition. Does that make a difference? I'm just wondering, you know, because it's a global competition, you have participants from all over. You mentioned South Korea a little bit earlier. Are there cultural differences or cultural influences that inform a bartender's creation?
Mm, definitely, because one of the things the judges will test you on is originality, and you cannot be more original than yourself. So, what you bring to the table, then, if you pour out your heart and soul into it, then what you can present is originally you. So, that keeps things fresh, that keeps things interesting. And it was also very eye-opening to see all sorts of people who were competing because I thought that bartenders were only my age. But then when I came to the global stage, it was, bar owners who were 42 years old. There were like, bar directors who were like 36, and there were, other uh, bartenders who were, in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and people are really doing this, and they're
Okay.
seriously
So
pursuing this as a
So
career.
clearly,
And then
Amanda,
that's
there
when I
is longevity in this career. Clearly, you can have a certain level of longevity in this career. It's not just something that is for young people, as this
Mm,
global competition has showed you.
absolutely. I feel like, a lot of people have this misconception that bartending is only for young people, but bartending as a profession, you need to treat it as a career, not a lifestyle. If you treat it as a lifestyle, you will burn out very quickly because it's the late nights, it's, the crazy influences, whatever it may be. But if you treat it as a career, every single night you are hosting the best party of your life, and you are really just making sure everyone there is having the best time of their lives.
Right.
And then after that, you need to remove yourself from it because this is not something that you have to continue on because it is a job at the end of
Yep.
the day.
Yep. It's the professionalism and service that you bring to the role, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, you know, you talked a little bit earlier about there's nothing more original than being yourself. That's the originality, the authenticity that judges are looking for. If I were to ask you, Amanda, what defines your style when you create your concoctions, well, how would you describe it to me?
It's really odd because for as long as I've been making drinks, it's always been to make the drink that the person in front of you wants to drink.
Huh?
So when you start out, you ask them what they like and what they're looking for. Do they like stronger flavors? Do they like floral notes? Do they, it is really the best drink that you can make for them is the drink they want to drink. And when I think about making drinks for myself, then I think, okay, so I gravitate towards tea and flowers. So most of the drinks that I would make just for fun or for myself would be, tea influenced and floral.
That's lovely. That's your signature style. Okay, that's quite interesting. I do want to ask you whether these types of competitions, the Diageo World Class competition, does that help in a bartender's career? Do competitions like these help careers?
I think that competitions like these definitely help careers, but you need to be very wise about what you do at the competition and after the competition, because at the competition you're given a platform to really showcase yourself
Mhm.
and also go out there and network, make the connections, get to know the people, and that is how you get seen. So, if you're thinking about competing just so that you can be famous and be on magazines and that's it, then you're really just wasting that opportunity.
Right.
So, you need to treat it as a stepping stone to greater things. It's not the end all by any means,
Right. And
but you need to
how would you, I guess, define success as a bartender? So it's not about the glamour in front of the scene, right? It's about, well, what is it to you? How would you measure success?
if there's anything, bartending is like the least glamorous job. You have so much rubbish to clean up afterwards, from like puke to condoms and stuff.
Oh
But
my.
anyway, I would mark success as when a bartender has got something to give back to the community, whether it's by championing a cause that's close to your heart, whether it's social justice, whether it's sustainability in the environment, whether it's, education. When you can give back and you do, then you are a successful bartender. I feel like if all that you've garnered for yourself is fame and fortune and it is just yours to claim, then there is no meaning behind it. That is not the definition of success.
That's very well said. I'm wondering how, for you being in the service industry, the food and beverage industry, which has no doubt been, hit hard by the pandemic, how has that changed the nature of your work? Are you able to go out and be a bartender now that, we have almost no nightlife anymore? The entertainment, the food and beverage industry is quite it's been dampened a lot since the start of the pandemic. Are you affected?
Yeah, the F&B industry as a whole has definitely taken a huge hit because you can't eat out and drink out without with a mask. Like when you eat and drink, you need to remove your mask, and there's social distancing measures and stuff like that. But the great thing about bartending is that you know our industry is very resilient and is very adaptable. Take for instance, in Hong Kong, the Pontiac, which was a dive cocktail bar, they overnight turned their cocktail bar into a cafe and started opening during the day, offering coffee and also cocktails. And also Jigger and Pony in Singapore opened for lunch. So, it is that sense of can do and attitude that really marks our industry as something to be reckoned with. And
Right. So you reckon that this industry is resilient enough to bounce back when economies open up again?
yep, definitely,
All right.
because
So where are you going to go from here, Amanda? What are the future plans? What can we expect to hear from you next?
future plans actually it's it's quite interesting because over the years I realized that I really enjoy the training and development and education part of it.
Mm.
And the fun thing is I found it to be an utter joy to work with children. A lot of people will think it is a stretch for a bartender to relate to children, but think
Well, you
about
can't serve them
most.
drinks, but what would you teach them? What would you train them to do?
Well, most drunk people are pretty much the same as toddlers. They babble, they sing, they dance, and they're not very coherent. And the cool thing about interacting with children is that I get to teach them crafts, and to work with their hands to really pick up a motor skill, a new motor skill,
Right.
to combine this with that, and to really see them learn and be good at something really just makes my heart sing.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
whether or not it's a new bartender or it's a 5-year-old child, it still makes me so happy.
Well, that's nice. It's one way for you to, I guess, perhaps teach them how to express their creativity however they so wish. Amanda, thank you so much for speaking with me tonight. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show and learning more about this industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
That's all we have for you on this episode of The Future is Female. I will be back with you same time next week. Thank you so much for watching, folks. Good night.